Initiating Insight with Sibongile. Hi and welcome to Initiating Insight with Sibongile and friends. And today I am with Joshua Maponga. The last time we were together was quite a while.
Yeah, you almost got me. You almost got me butchered on Soweto TV. Yeah.
One of the things that people don't forget is the comment you made about a prophet who tells you about your history. That then they are not a prophet; they are a historian.
Even the devil was there.
Yeah.
So what can be new on that?
And today we're talking about something different. We know that even in South Africa, we're talking about land compensation without,
land distribution without compensation.
Without compensation. But I don't hear what the church says about it. I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. And I mean, even our politicians, I think, they don't really know what to do and how to go about this. There are different opinions and different views on this. And today I invited this young handsome man here to share his nonsensical views and opinions on this. Yeah, let's talk about this. The land.
I hear you mention big words like land distribution without compensation. By actually mentioning land distribution without compensation, you're legitimizing land theft. There's a principle. So we're not redistributing land. We are taking it back. We're not distributing it. We're not waiting for someone to come and distribute it. It's like a cake, so you must eat a piece. No. We're actually land reclaim. You must change that land distribution to land reclaiming. So we need to define it correctly. Because we are at home here. We cannot go to Europe and claim any piece of London. We cannot go to Australia and claim any piece of Lisbon. We can't go to America and claim any piece of New York. When I was in New York, I was an illegal immigrant. When I was in Australia, I was an alien. When I was in Britain, I was called a foreigner. And I'm in Africa, what am I? So
in order for us to be able to have these processes go according to, or to have these processes go smoothly, if anything, we need to then redefine. Or
we need to redefine.
Be careful on words that we use.
Because by actually using some certain words, we are legitimizing something. And then you find people who are weak in thinking, who think that they are smart, and they want to talk about the rule of law kind of thing. And my comments are simple. If you take something without the law, it must be taken away from you without the law. But if what they did was legally right, when they did it using the law, then we must use the law to take it back. So we did not have the Roman and Dutch law prior to land dispossession. So you cannot refer us to the rule of law of the Roman Dutch. Do I look like a Dutchman? Do I look like a Roman?
Let me see. I'll think about it.
So for what it is worth, we cannot now run around to the Romans and to the Dutch, go and collect their legislations, come and force them on the South African and the African communities, force the whole community to adhere to a piece of legislation, copy and paste of Canadian rules, Australian rules, European rules, to make up what they call a constitution, so as it were educated people sit around stupidly to bow ties, they call them judges and etc., stupid wigs, and they're arguing that the land needs a rule of law. I mean, for crying out loud, take off those ugly wigs, talk to us as indigenous people, the Ingonyama Trust, the Tswana Trust, and etc. Talk to the lockup, and you cannot begin to take us to high courts to argue about our own ownership. It's almost like taking me to high court to argue about my own complexion, arguing about my own language and etc. Those things are not written in the books of law. It's part of who we are. We don't own our land. Our land owns us. From it we came, to it we shall return.
Just see. Speaking of Dutch code, let's speak about the different aspects of the land. Let's begin with the colonial land. When we say colonial land, what are we talking about?
We are talking colonial land because when the colonizer comes into Africa, he does not bring a briefcase, which is carrying land. He's carrying gunpowder. He's carrying Bibles. He's carrying his wife's clothes. He's bringing nothing except a briefcase and some form of knowledge of how to manage the primitive people. So we had two types of people that came to Africa. Firstly, we had what are called the missionaries, who came with the gospel, because Africa was supposed to be a dark continent. But until you understand that Africa and Palestine, it's East and South Eden. So we're never pagan at all. The book was written right on our ground here. Jesus grew up a few streams across Africa here in Egypt. So you're not bringing a light into a dark continent. You're just returning what belongs to us. Basically, the Bible does not have European history. The only white people that appear is the Romans. We were crucifying Jesus. But the rest of the book, it's our history. So in the pretext of that, so you have firstly the missionary. But behind the missionary then was this other group they called the mercenaries. The mercenaries were actually hiding behind the missionaries. So we had a group in front that was talking religion and talking Christianizing. But immediately when the Christian was docile to bow his head and start praying, he discovered that he had lost the grip of land. And on that note then, they went to the local chiefs and asked for land. Here's the tricky part. You're talking to two different paradigms. We want to insult Shaka, insult Mlobengula, insult African leaders for giving away land to the whites, and we say they were stupid, they tasted sugar, they had mirrors, and they took. You don't understand that environment. You cannot use modern thinking to judge ancient decisions. Sure. If a man comes to you in your primitiveness and asks for land, honestly, in your mind you would not think that he would grab the land, dig it, and put it in a bag, and then run away with it. So our chiefs, in the name of courtesy, said, you can have it. Sure. With an understanding that you can work on it, but you can never be able to take it out. But while they said you can have it, then the institutions of learning were brewing on the side. The judicial system processes were being put on the side. Few months later, pegs were being put around the farm. Graves of our grandfathers were now locked up in a white mess. Now you need a permit to enter into the thing. Now all of a sudden you cannot have access. So this was an escalation of playing on people's ignorance into the space of legalities until you got Africans disenfranchised. So we even have the European people sitting around the table, cutting Africa into pieces like a slice of bread. Who takes the crust, who takes the corner, and not even one African was on that committee. We did not even agree, as it were, that we'll be having our Limpopo River here, Swaziland. Swaziland used to be right up to Witbank. Here into Mpumalanga, Lesotho used to be the whole of Bloemfontein and etc. Zimbabwe was running right into Maponga here. So you're looking at all these historical boundaries that are being distorted. The Makalanga people are heavy on the Zimbabwe side, heavy on the Botswana side. Now you must get a passport in Gaborone and go to Harare so that you can cross for a wedding of a cousin across a fence. So colonial land has to do with the whole distribution of the African space into what we have now as countries with passports, flags, stupid national anthems. We don't even know what they mean. But that's for another day.
What is the difference, or rather, what is the relationship between the colonial land and the cultural land?
The cultural land is what we would consider as our own heritage. How do you know that we own the land? A simple birth certificate are the graveyards of our own fathers. Sure. That's how we know that this is. If I can say my grandfather is here, and his father is here, and his grandfather is here, and he is here, that for me is a birth certificate that cannot be found anywhere else. Anything else that tries to prove land as being owned by a person is a lie. Anyone who is selling land is a thief, because no one is the original receipt from God who says, I bought this land.
Original receipt from God.
Because he's the one who created the land. If we want to run on the Christian perspective, again, of the same book they gave us. So if you are now telling me that I must buy land, I must compensate you for the land, then I want the receipt of where did you buy it first. Because you cannot have stolen property in your hand and then you want to resell it. Is that not a crime scene?
But Mr. So-and-so sold me the land.
From where? Let's just keep on going back. Let's keep on going back. So he sold it from where? From where? One day you'll find, no, I came from London, I spoke to the chief, and the chief said I can have it. Okay, fine. So did you pay for it? Do you remember any white person who came to Africa here with a briefcase full of shekels and money and pounds and gold and walked up to an African chief and delivered 2, 3, 10 million pounds and dollars, and then you got a piece of land in those ancient times? The answer is a big no. They all worked on laissez-faire, gentlemen's agreements, and cultural perspectives. So we have communities that were destabilized. Now what we call cultural land are actually arid, unproductive pieces of land. And the colonial land has now become the commercial land on which business is taking place. And something that is said, Sibongile, which makes me cry almost to my tears, when Africans have a chance of taking land, I don't support land invasion, as it were. I actually support national occupation. Take everything.
What's the difference?
Spelling. That's the first one. But rather than spelling, I'm saying we cannot allow people to take the law onto their own hands when the government is there negotiating and dilly-dallying around certain issues of policies and people are getting frustrated.
But it sounds like you're contradicting yourself.
I am saying the government cannot be sitting around dealing with legalities.
Yeah.
And then people are now beginning to do it violently. And now the government is using its instrument to stop the people. Yeah. Okay. So the government needs to take an initiative and empower its people to do it. And nature will justify us for doing that. I was on this point that when you now talk about blacks occupying land, what is embarrassing is that they still take Mokuku land, 2 meters by 3 meters, so that they can put his Mkuku. We have not yet started thinking that land is actually for agriculture. It's for mines. It's for business. If I would go for land invasion, I would make sure that I take a kilometer, if not 2 kilometers. And the person says, hey, please, don't come close to me. This is all mine. Then we can utilize that space. So we have to understand that culturally speaking, we are still looking at basic needs. And right now, the land invasions we're having in South Africa are based on poverty, people just looking for accommodation.
Where do we even begin? How do you suppose the government should then approach this? When will they have the time to educate their people to saying that accommodation is not only it's not the only thing that you should worry about? Broaden your mindsets, wake up from this sleep or slumber that you've been on. Where do we even begin?
As a scholar in my own right of history books are purged with blood stains. When you read history, basically you are dealing with human anger against each other in various aspects, from the kings of old and the queens and princesses, coming to our times, from the Roman wars to the Moors in Spain. You're dealing with the African, the Shakas, the Zulus, and history is stained in blood. Why? Because injustice, if it is allowed to continue and people don't address it, then all you're doing is infuriating one tribe against the other tribe. One day a tribe will come up, another generation will come up, which does not remember who Madiba is, who does not remember what this whole treaty of South Africa being what. Look at the Hutus and the Tutsis. Look at the Matabele and Mashonas in Zimbabwe. Go further up north. Look at the ethnic wars, ethnic cleansings that have happened from Croatia to the Jews and etc. Look carefully and see what is the bone of contention. You will find that land is an issue. The Afrikaner and the white man who is enjoying himself in South Africa, God bless you. If you were using land as Christians, that is to utilize and take only what you can use, and the rest give it to others, then in welfare there will be peace. But for one man to occupy the size of Soweto, 2 kilometers away from Soweto, and Soweto people are living on top of each other, and you call that justice and the rule of law, I think it's anarchy in breeding. History will judge us fairly, and when that day happens, this prophecy will come to pass. Better we distribute land equally when there is still peace than to activate war and people get angry indigenously over their own land and then bloodbaths. I'm not advocating for bloodbaths. At least people think that is hate speech. This is common sense. You can step on me, I'll go, excuse me. You step on me again, I say, sorry sister. Step on me, I might push you. You keep on stepping on me and I'll look at you. By the time the police are coming and say, Maponga is an abuser. We found him choking a woman, beautiful woman. We don't understand what's wrong with this man, he's a barbarian. But those people who were witnessing, they will say, hey, man,
this woman has been a pest.
Ask this guy, man, we saw this thing happening all along. And I hope that people who are sensitive and sensible enough can look at these conversations as a small little red flag at the corner of a pitch. Someone says, offside, offside please. We're crossing the line now. You cannot tell me that 52 million people in South Africa, and of the 52 million in the country, which makes the 100%, only 4 to 5%, way below 20%, are actually owning 90% of all productive land.
Let's talk spiritual land. What are we talking? And how is the spiritual land different from the commercial, the colonial, and the cultural land that we've touched on?
In the colonial land, we're politically divided. In the cultural land, we're celebrating our history as a nation. In the commercial land, we're actually making profits and making business with ourselves, with our neighbors, and etc. When it comes to spiritual land, I cannot mess it up to say the occupancy of that land with a white deity then disenfranchises us altogether. Sure. There's a conundrum right there. By agreeing that Jews are white, we're actually allowing them and giving them permission to abuse anybody else who does not believe in Yah.
Sure.
So immediately when a person says, I'm a Jew, they have a biblical right over occupancy and ownership of anything that they find. Because wherever your foot will go, you will own, and all those theologies that go with them. So in the spiritual space, in that we've actually occupied our spiritual space with white deities. We've actually disenfranchised ourselves from the black soil that we own actually. Because our theology controls our behavior. By having a confused theology on the upside, we cannot hope for a profit on the downside. So spiritually, we have lost our land. We have lost our spirituality. We pray in English. Not that we cannot use our own languages just for correction, but for the purpose of communication, we are doing this. But you find that we have lost our spiritual turf, and because we have lost that connection with our turf, the physicality of that spiritual loss, the physicality of the spiritual transaction, the ramifications are devastating, because you're looking at the loss of your fashion, the loss of your music, the loss of your culture, the loss of your food, the loss of your homeland, the loss. You just end up as Fanon would put, one of my favorite authors, you end up as black skins, with white masks. In other words, we've all become coconuts. So much on black on the outside, but our thinking, our eating, our perceptions of life are all cultured in white traits. We eat white, we drink white, we dress white, we walk white, we sleep white, we drive white, we live white. So this remains almost like, what do you want the land for as blacks? Because you already have what you want, which is a very interesting argument. Because on the pretext...
What do the blacks wear?
Because on the pretext, nothing. We just have black skins. That's all.
How come you say we have what we want?
That's a communism at its best. Blacks,
that we have already?
The rich get richer and the black ones make children. We're just good for producing labor for the white market. That's basically what it is. But when we've lost our spiritual identity, we don't want to call our spiritual land, then we'll find that we'll have lost everything else. Because once the head of a fish is rotten, the rest of the fish is already finished. It's rotten also. So if the thinking of the black person has been already been the bug, the Trojan horse has bugged the software of thinking, there is no way that the hardware will behave anything that is contrary.
Initiating Insight with Sibongile, I'm sitting with Joshua Maponga. What is the identity? What is the spiritual identity of a black person?
The library of a white man is in books. The library of a black man is in the world of the spirit, which we need to access. And what religion did for the best was to cut the link between the black man and his culture, black man and his heritage. Ask me why. Why? Because that connected him to his history. And if a black man can identify his history, he may just discover who he is. And when he discovers who he is, the question is, how will he respond to what you are telling him that he is? Right now, we're being told that we are less than human. We don't have souls. Some theological corners are still arguing if black people are real black, are really human beings. And when you're still listening, if we are not real black people, if we're not real people, then what are you doing here with us, with animals? Go back to the lands where they are human beings. But I'm not tell them that you come here and you enjoy all these benefits. We look at our brains and look between men and think that they're dealing with a dull person with all these brains, and I'm stupid. Our identity is a very ground that, the interesting one. When you say, but they're born here, and then they become Africans. Oh, wow, interesting. When a black man is born in Europe, will he ever be a European? Have you ever seen a black European? But of course, Africa is an interesting place. When a white man comes here, he can actually go an African. With all due respect, we accept you.
Well, Africa swallows everything.
We cannot kick you off. We cannot kick you off. But this is what it is. Our identity has to do with more of us linking with ourselves, finding our initial purpose of existence, and allowing ourselves to identify ourselves and write our own history with our own fingers, so that the complexion of our history has the color of the one who is writing it. Because you know, tell me that black history starts with Van Riebeeck, as if we were not here. So they come around and they start writing our own history, telling us how they... What type of education teaches you about everybody else except teaching you about yourself?
Any hope at doing that at all? Like writing their own history?
That's where we're starting. That's where we need to start doing that. We need to collect all the oral traditions and put them into space, because actually the last and most critical piece of land will become the mental land, which is the mind. And it all grows grass also, just like...
You call it LQ?
Yes, yeah. Mind, intelligence of the brain. Who occupies this land? Sure. What sort of seeds are they putting in here? What sort of crop have they planted in our minds? And whoever has permission to plant on your ground has permission to harvest from it. And do not allow illegal immigrants to occupy this piece of land, because that's sacred space.
History would tell me personally that there have been illegal immigrants and you didn't have a choice. So how do you begin to evacuate them?
The conversations we're having right now are not only for addressing the past. They're not only for awakening us in the present, but they're actually the very manure of the future generations. Looking at where we are coming from, which resulted in us being where we are, and looking at where we are right now going forward. I know when we grow up, our age, Mommy bring us sweets, Mommy bring us some coke, Mommy bring us some nice, sweet, nice things. But right now at your age, knowing what you know and knowing where you're coming from, Mommy bring me some sweets, you bring them an apple, you bring them an orange. It used to be fun. Let's go to the shops, go and do some takeaways. Get some these fried little chickens, drooling with chips and with oil. Now we know that's not healthy. We begin to dig up gardens. So tell me, where is civilization going? Are we going forward into industrialization, or we're going back into organic lifestyles? Ultimately, the life of the future is not all this industry that we're looking at. The life of the future is actually the very primitiveness of life that we are running away from.
That's all the time we had for today. Initiating Insight with Sibongile and friends, Joshua Maponga. Join us on Facebook, Joshua.
Yeah, at your own risk. At your own risk. You'll find me on Facebook, by Joshua Maponga. You'll find me on Farmers of Thought. That's my organization and institution. You find me on Twitter. You find me on Instagram. You look for me, you will find me, if you look for me with all your heart.
And when you will find him, you might just see me as well.
Yeah.
Sibongile Mlangeni, Initiating Insight. Until next time, ciao ciao. Initiating Insight with Sibongile.